Urban exploration is a hobby that attracts those with a sense of adventure and a love for history. Hidden among the thriving cities and towns are relics of the past, abandoned buildings and factories that once buzzed with activity but now stand silent and eerie. For some, these forgotten places are a treasure trove of stories and mysteries waiting to be uncovered. The Harlan Steel Factory was located on the outskirts of town, a massive structure surrounded by a high rusting fence.
Alex, the most experienced of the group, had done his research. He knew that the factory had been closed down in the 1970s after the explosion, and since then, it had been left to decay.
The trio approached the fence, their flashlights cutting through the twilight gloom. They found a section where the fence had been bent back, creating a small opening just large enough to slip through. One by one, they entered the grounds of the factory, their excitement tinged with nervous anticipation. The main building loomed ahead, its windows broken and its walls covered in graffiti.
They made their way to a large rusted door that hung precariously on its hinges.
With a little effort, they managed to pry it open, revealing the dark interior of the factory.
The air inside was thick with dust and the smell of rusting metal.
Their flashlights illuminated the vast, empty space, filled with the skeletal remains of machinery and assembly lines. The silence was almost oppressive, broken only by the occasional drip of water from the ceiling. As they ventured deeper into the factory, they discovered remnants of its past life. Old tools, workbenches, and even some workers' personal items left behind in the rush to abandon the site.
They found a locker room with rusted lockers, some still containing faded photographs and notes.
In one corner of the factory, they came across a set of stairs leading down to the basement.
According to my research, the explosion had originated in the basement, where the boiler room was located.
The group hesitated, knowing the basement would be the most dangerous part of their exploration, but their curiosity won out. The stairs creaked ominously as they descended into the basement. The air grew colder and the smell of damp and decay became more pronounced.
They reached the bottom of the stairs and found themselves in a narrow hallway lined with doors.
The boiler room was at the end of the hall. As they approached the door to the boiler room, they heard a faint rhythmic tapping sound.
They exchanged nervous glances but continued forward.
Alex pushed open the door, revealing a large room dominated by the hulking remains of the boiler.
The tapping sound grew louder, echoing off the walls. They shone their flashlights around the room, but there was no obvious source for the noise.
Then, Jenny spotted something that made her blood run cold. A series of deep scratches on the floor, leading from the boiler to the far wall.
They followed the scratches to a section of the wall that appeared different from the rest.
Alex ran his hands along the wall and found a hidden latch. With some effort, he managed to pry open a hidden door, revealing a small dark room behind it.
Inside the room, they found a set of old, dusty files and a strange-looking machine that none of them could identify.
The files contained records of the factory's operations, as well as reports on the explosion. As they flipped through the documents, a horrifying picture began to emerge. The explosion had not been an accident. It had been a deliberate act of sabotage by a disgruntled worker who had been wrongfully dismissed.
The files detailed the worker's threats and his plan to destroy the factory.
But there was more. Reports of strange occurrences leading up to the explosion, and eyewitness accounts of seeing the worker's ghost wandering the factory after his death. As they read through the files, the tapping sound intensified, now accompanied by the faint sound of whispering.
The temperature in the room dropped further, and their flashlights flickered.
They realized they were not alone.
The door to the hidden room slammed shut, trapping them inside.
Panic set in as they tried to force it open, but it wouldn't budge.
The whispering grew louder, and they could make out words, angry, accusing words. The ghost of the saboteur was making his presence known.
Jenny screamed as she felt a cold hand brush against her neck.
Mike swung his flashlight wildly, trying to find the source of the whispers, but there was nothing there.
Alex, trying to stay calm, shouted at the ghost, pleading for it to let them go.
Suddenly, the whisper stopped and the door swung open on its own.
Without hesitation, they bolted out of the room and raced up the stairs, not stopping until they were outside the factory, gasping for breath.
They didn't speak until they were safely outside the factory grounds, the rusting fence once again separating them from the horrors within.
They vowed never to return to the Harlan Steel Factory and to warn others of the dangers lurking inside.
The Harlan Steel Factory remains abandoned to this day, a decaying monument to a dark past. Urban explorers occasionally venture into its depths, drawn by the stories of ghosts and hidden secrets. But those who do often report feeling watched, hearing whispers, and seeing shadows that shouldn't be there. Alex, Jenny, and Mike never forgot their terrifying experience. They continued their urban explorations, but with a newfound respect for the abandoned places they visited. They learned that some stories are best left untold and some places are better left undisturbed.